Barbara Kendall Davies, your next book to be published is entitled Worlds Within Worlds. Tell us about how this book came to be written.
Well, it's rather a difficult one, this, because it challenges our three-dimensional attitude to reality. And I'm afraid my readers are going to have to stretch their belief somewhat to understand what is coming over. But it all began when my husband, Christopher Davies, my 3-year-old son, Giles, and I moved to a 1900 house in Harrow, northwest London. We'd been looking for a house for some time, but all prices had just shot up, and we'd begun to get rather despondent as to whether we would find what we were looking for. And then suddenly this house became available, and as soon as I stepped over the threshold, I knew this is our house. We actually stayed there for 20 years. Well, my husband was out one evening rehearsing. My son was asleep in bed, and I thought, lovely, I'm going to have a really restful evening. I'm going to put my feet up, have a cup of coffee, and read a magazine I've just bought. Well, suddenly I found I was bilocating. I was quite aware that I was sitting on the sofa with my feet up, but I was also actually myself, but disembodied out in the cosmos. And it was the most wonderful, exhilarated feeling of freedom that one could ever have. And I didn't want to come back, although I knew that my nearest and dearest were all still on Earth. Finally, I found myself just sitting on the sofa again, but it had been a most profound experience. When my husband came home, I told him about it, and he said, well, I don't understand what it's all about, but I can see that you have had a profound experience. And he was very supportive, very, very supportive, whereas I had other friends who were starting a spiritual journey, quite accidentally they thought, and their husbands couldn't cope with it, and some ended up being divorced. Well, nothing much happened for the next 9 years because we were so busy as singers and running our own company, the Apollo Group of London, travelling a lot. But then in 1982, at my son's school, the Purcell School of Music at Harrow on the Hill, there was a fete. And the week before, my son had said to me, I want you to see this clairvoyant lady who will be at our fete. And I didn't really know what a clairvoyant was. And I said, oh, is it somebody doing an act with a crystal ball? And he said, no, it's a real thing. And then finally, the afternoon was almost over when he bounded across with his friend Alex Heffis, now a successful composer in Hollywood, but they were just 11-year-olds at that time. And he said, have you seen that lady yet? And I said, oh, don't bother me. And he said, I think you should. So she was sitting in a tent, and there was a little queue of people waiting to see her outside, and some woman came out shaking her head saying, that was amazing, that was amazing. I waited my turn. I sat next to her sister, it turned out to be Mary, and she said, oh, it's my sister Christine. I thought she said Christina, and I've always called her Christina, though her name is Christine Holohan. Anyway, eventually my turn came, and it revolutionised my life. She told me things that she could not possibly have known. She told me where I was going to find myself in these beautiful palaces, beautiful places somewhere abroad. I recognised where she was talking because it was Munich, and I was going to Munich the following week. I've been to Munich many times before. And then there were other things that came up that were completely outside my ken, and it set me on a journey of discovery. I asked a young colleague, Leon Berger, who said he was interested in those sort of things, where would you go to see a really eminent person in that field? And he said, go and see Ivy Northage at the College of Psychic Studies. Well, I rang up and they said, oh, Mrs. Northage is about to take an American tour, so she's only seen 4 people this week and she's already booked. Normally I would just take no for an answer, but something made me say, if there's a cancellation, may I have it? Phone rang next morning, could you come this afternoon to South Kensington? Mrs. Northage could see you. Fortunately, there was nothing I couldn't rearrange in the afternoon, so I went down to the College of Psychic Studies. I didn't know what that sort of place would be like. I thought it might be spooky. It was just like any other academic establishment. The reception hall was in the library. I was early. I had a look at some of their books and I was amazed at how many things were published on such esoteric subjects. Well, to cut a long story short, I became a member of the College of Psychic Studies, and what appears in Worlds Within Worlds will show just what a journey I have been on ever since.